Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Here live from the UK. It's Car Design News with this week's live stream. We've got a really interesting program of people for you today. I'm really proud to have these phenomenal speakers from GAC, but I've got a special guest who's going to be running our Q&A today, and that is Maxime Morland, the editor for Car Design News. So if I can welcome Maxime onto the stage with me. Good afternoon, Maxime. How are you?
I'm very well, Abel. How are you?
Yes, so you can see all these people below us. We've got some super famous people. Max, you're under a lot of pressure. You've got to dig deep and find the dirt of what's happening in the world of GAC. Are you ready?
Always.
Okay, so I'm going to actually say goodbye to Max. Lovely to see you. We'll catch up with you later. See you soon. And now, to start with, we're going to actually bring in Fan Zhang from GAC to actually just run through what's going to happen. He's going to showcase all the studios, and the way the format is going to work today is we're going to have David Hilton talking about the ENO 146, the interior, and then we're going to have Pontus talking about the exterior, which is something new, which we haven't published yet on Car Design News. Then we're going to have a Fan talk about a production car, the Aeon V, which will be released in a couple of weeks, and then followed by a Q&A. Within each session, there's some amazing graphics we're going to show you, some images. And also we're going to have a Q&A after each section, which Max will be running. So if I can bring and request Fan to switch on his camera.
Hi, everybody.
Hey Fan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you able?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Yeah, I should say good evening because now it's 10 o'clock in China.
Exactly. You should be drinking a cocktail. It's cocktail hour now in China.
Not really, but I should be preparing for bed already. But it's okay. My pleasure having this opportunity to share some of our experiences and also new designs to all the dear colleagues.
Yeah. So before we get started, one of the strengths that GAC has is this global studio base. So can you take us quickly through where your offices are and what each of them does?
Yeah, my pleasure, of course. GAC is a young Chinese-based company, but obviously we have our ambition to be global. And apparently we actually have set up studios globally, mainly in America and in China. Right now in America, we have a design center in Los Angeles, and R&D center in Silicon Valley, and also a R&D center in Detroit. In China, we have two studios. Our headquarters is in Guangzhou, and plus we have set advanced studio in Shanghai. So with all those facilities, we could collaborate together and trying to utilize the best talent in the world, and also to contribute to the design work of GAC. As you know, Chinese market is the biggest car market in the world, and I think it's also the most competitive car market in the world. So try to survive there, you have to use the best talent in the world to create the best products in the world. So that's why we have to try our best, and we set up those studios. I think we have some images to quickly go through that could give you some visual idea about how our working environments are. Like, for example, in Guangzhou, this is a kind of a plan view of the GAC R&D center. As you can see, we have a huge facility for office and also a test track. And we also have very spacious and status to art kind of office environment. Yeah, this is our viewing area, outdoor viewing area. Like every design studio, you have to see the car from in full size and in outdoor, in natural nighting environment. What else we got? And yeah, there are several images. I think I don't need to introduce them one by one. We can quickly flick through, or I think I might meanwhile talk a little about how we cooperate between different studios. I think this is also one of the topic of tonight. Actually, even before the virus situation, our remote studio together with the headquarters, we already use a lot of online tools to help us to do this kind of a remote working. Actually, to me, our studio or colleagues in Shanghai and in LA, they are like homework or home working because I can't see them working every day. So try to ensure their output are good enough. First of all, of course, I have trust their professionalism. I do. But most importantly, I gave them very specific tasks, very specific targets. Like when we have projects kick off, I would assign each studio with a mission, what they need to achieve. And after a period of time, we're going to have reviews. And then I would point out what the next step. So by setting milestones for each period of time, I think each studio, even though they are not really with us, but they know clearly what their missions are. So therefore, they can work really hard towards the mission. And another secret is not really secret, but I think it's very, very important, is to keep very smooth communication between studios. I think keeping communication is a simple word to say, but sometimes in practice, it's really difficult to keep, especially for a situation like us. We have studios in different continent, and also people speak different language, but we try very hard to keep this communication smooth, trying to avoid the misunderstanding as much as possible, but to align each other's kind of the mission and also the purpose together. So far.
Can I ask you a question, Fan?
Yes.
I've got a question. You've got these remote studios, and one of the benefits you have of being in China, you were actually in the forefront of the lockdown, the first lockdown.
Right.
Can you share with us what learning you gave to the other studios about the lockdown, and you know, how they used you in maybe a different way going through the lockdown process? Can you share that with the audience?
Yeah. Well, actually, we had lockdown in February. Because of this virus situation, we postponed because in end of January, beginning of February was happened to be a Chinese New Year holiday for us. But because of the lockdown, we postponed the reopening of the studio for like about 2 weeks. But during these 2 weeks, we try to utilize the internet as much as possible. Our IT engineers also developed a cloud tool for everybody to use. As what they said, they try to achieve this 3A like purpose. That means anytime, anywhere, any devices. you actually could get access to the cloud, to our server, and then to continue working, no matter you're at home or you're in a coffee or somewhere else. But I think this cloud technology and also the internet technology really help you to be free out of a certain location, and I believe that's the future. Even now, I think lockdown has been released long time ago for China, but even till now, we still have some of our meeting like goes online rather than on site, because it turned out online meetings sometimes could be even more efficient in terms of keeping the concentration, and also we'll have people to talk more to the point. So those are the lessons we have learned from this experience. Yeah, I do think that could be the future.
Excellent. So Fan, I'm going to thank you for that brief introduction, and we're going to bring you back later. You're going to come and talk about the production car later. So if I can ask you to turn off your camera, if you've got any questions for Fan, please do ask them, and to David. And I'm going to hand over the control to David now, and he's going to take control of the screen.
Hello, David. How are you? Good, very good. Thanks very much. How are you?
Excellent. I'm well. Can you tell us where you are at the moment and why you are in that location?
Well, I'm actually still in Germany. I came over here right for the spring break to China, and I guess the rest is history. We've been China, of course, was in lockdown there, so we couldn't fly back, and now then Germany became quite the hot spot. Cologne here being the hottest, ironically, so we had to be super careful. And now it's getting better here. The bell curve has gone down, but there are still no flights to China for foreigners at the moment.
Thanks, David. And the good news is, although we didn't get to see the Shanghai studio, we can't see the Shanghai studio because you're in Germany, I think you're going to give us a sneak preview of it. So what we're going to do is, those of you who have the opportunity to see interior motives, you would have seen the interior story of the vehicle, but now David's going to do a bit of a deeper dive and give us some exclusive sketches. So I'm going to turn off my camera now, David, and you can take the floor, and then Max will come back and join you to actually ask some questions.
Super, thanks a lot. Yes, thanks Abel, thanks everyone else. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm assuming you can see my screen right now, correct? So again, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to walk through where we are, what we've achieved with the Eno 146 interior. I think it's an amazing achievement overall. It's one of the most proud projects I've ever worked on, and yeah, we're very thankful to GAC for giving us this incredibly rare opportunity. So the studio in Shanghai is, if anyone knows Shanghai at all, it's in the South Bund, near the Art and Design District. So it's right on the river, fantastic location. We're next to the power station of Art, right on the river. It's an older building, which has a lot of museums and bars and restaurants around it. So Shanghai-wise, it's a great location. It's sort of a very large industrial building. So we have an open space, very light, all windows. It's a historically protected skeleton of a building that just has a glass box around it, basically. So we have a wonderful open air feeling to the studio. We also have in the back of the bottom image, you can see there's an area for we can do scale clay modeling. And of course, all the vendors around the Shanghai area are within an hour or two drive for making everything, including the show car that you're about to see. So here we are at the opening with Fan, of course, and our President Wang and the team. This was in November 2018, which CDN covered. That was a great day. And here we are, literally the week before Spring Festival. This is the last time the whole team was together as a complete unit. We're mostly back at this point, but this was the last photo taken before masks and distancing and all that. So yeah, fun, but I guess no one would have known that was coming. So let's get on to the interior of the Eno 146. and start with the fundamentals. Wind shapes not just the exterior, but it also shapes the interior. It's incredibly important that we get the cabin form down quickly. So from the very beginning of this project, we wanted to create the best aerodynamic vehicle made. That was set out from the very get-go as an innovation premise. So we have our company pillars of innovation and experience. And I think this vehicle hits on both of them perfectly. So early on in the project, we had the designers like in the Shanghai and Guangzhou teams work on a digital model that would get us quickly to a decent CD number at our target, but also to solidify the cabin space, because as that is critical for aero outside, it's of course critical for the interior package. So our first goal was to get to a decent base model and with a good cabin that we could more or less freeze. And the first model we produced actually hit a number of 0.0159, so that gave us a great base for the exterior and interior teams to work from. So thus, the interior is incredibly aero-driven. The outer cabin form just is what it is, and we had to deal with that. We didn't want anything too small because frontal mass year numbers will get better. So there was that trade-off between how big and how small it could be. So regarding the story, this is how the story came together with the physical world. We had in the beginning some ideas already in place of different functional zones for the interior. We called Smart Me, Eco World, Healthy Us, and GAC Joy. And these are different activities, but they're also different purposes for each individual passenger or pairs of passengers within the vehicle. So at this point, we had a basic cabin form, plus minus, but we were looking at scenarios of how to integrate how many people we could get in it comfortably without being ridiculous. So we needed to have it spacious, even though we were limited by the cabin size. We tried our best to make it as spacious as possible. We fell in love with these flowing morphic zones so that one area could flow into another, even though they had different functionalities. So we looked at these waveforms and different activities of interaction physically and also visually. So we called this seamless embracing. We wanted an environment that was comfortable, accessible, but still would make you feel good. And if you wanted your privacy, you could have it. And if you didn't, you didn't have to. So it would be flexible. And this was a key sketch that sort of got us going. It started to develop these wave forms and then had the different zones sort of labeled. So this philosophically, this sketch helped a lot. So we continued with the lightweight feeling that we wanted things to appear like they were floating, not connected, and still have these waves coming in and out. So that was the premise we took forward with theme. In the beginning, it was a little bit stiff, but we kept pushing to keep it more and more fluid with each iteration of the design. So by this point, we'd settled in on the 2+1+2+1 package, which is completely centered around the extended Chinese family. So you have the grandparents, you have the parents, and you have the two kids. That is a typical scenario. And we thought, well, if we're going to make this vehicle spacious, why can we not accommodate the extended family? So imagine a best-in-class world aerodynamic vehicle that just happens to seat 6. That's never been done before, especially in this type of scenario atmosphere. So that was the rough package that we all agreed to, but we wanted it to be open, so the roof, even though it was going to be mostly glassy, it still needed to have a structure. So we wanted to have this observatory feel that when you're inside, you can still see through things. And I think that came through quite well in the design in the end. So this separately together motif, we had the different 4 zones of function, but they were also paired off by members of the family. So I'll get into a little detail on that, but the central zone would be the joy zone for the kids. The second row or second passenger for adults was the mother and the grandmother, and then the front for the father-grandfather. So sort of a traditional seating setup you would expect to be in a minivan, such as this. The interesting thing about the rear seat is that was the most compromised. So he's a singular seat, he's a teenager, he can be or she can be on his own, but the seat would move 300 millimeters in X so that person could be either 150 tall or 170 centimeters tall. So it was still a flexible zone area, even though the most compromised. So here you can see in the final design the flow elements, the waves going in and out of the seats. I think it gives you this very calming atmosphere, and the CMF, which I'll touch on, I think also contributes to a very relaxed, calming atmosphere. So the GA joist zone is the central epicenter of the interior. In the back, you have the teenager, and he has all the coolest toys in the world. He's got his VR helmet, he's got his gaming units, he can do music. You can see there's 2 individual speakers there, but on either side of the seat in the structural unit. It's a really cool getaway zone for that particular person, which suits the proportion of the cabin anyway. But it also can come forward, so he could interact with the mother and grandfather in the front if wanted. So it's a very flexible and fun zone. And this is what the rear passenger would see, staring right at the baby if there is one. But we also have a way to remove the baby seat too, so we'll show that. That joy zone has what we call the central piazza, which is a lit element. The floor was actually lit. You probably didn't get to see it in the actual images, or in the show car in Guangzhou, but it does light up with the flooring elements nicely. And there's a lighting on the roof compartment also, so that lighter color of the central part of the interior really pops out. And as I said, we had designs that unfortunately we didn't have time to build. We had plenty of ideas of what to do if the baby seat's not there. We could pull it out, put it on a table, have tea for the people in the back, or we had a lot of flexible options. But point being that everything that you see, you couldn't see the structural units. Everything appeared to be super thin, lightweight, floating, but still structurally very strong. There too, the driver interaction follows the same philosophy. The surrounding structure is interesting because it is structural elements in the front and the back, but it also houses all the technical features. So all the screen works, the steering wheel, the sound systems, even the back area where it's connected to the back of the second row passenger seat headrests are there. So it was treated very differently, but it would hide the technology as best we can until it was necessary. So you can see here where the speakers are actually located on the front IP, on the IP end. If you want to call it an IP, it's really a screen. And then on the rear, you have the headrests and the speakers all connected to that structural element, which goes behind that last rear person seat. And here too, you can see how the UI UX is implemented into that front structure. The roof structure was, this was the biggest challenge about co-locating because we had to come up with the roof structure. This is where interior meets exterior. So there was a lot of back and forth with the LA guys as they were developing the exterior theme. We had a cabin as a base, but we had to really get down to the millimeter in getting this element correct. So that was a lot of back and forth, but we ended up coming up with something I think was really spot on. It was challenging because it's so huge and the doors were hinged to it, and the lines could get wobbly real easily, so we had to be super tight to make sure this thing looked good. And I think in the end it came off quite neat with this slatted line feel, which is both in the roof and it's on the front end, and the interior also we have elements of that. It's an overriding detail that happened to be functional and structural, and I think it worked quite well. We still had this very open appeal to it. So when I hit on the CMF story, which is also a fantastic cultural kick, the whole CMF was based on the Chinese lotus flower. Specifically meaning you have the center as the seed. In our case, it was the kids, and they would have the brightest color. And then as it goes out, it would become darker until it goes into the shaded lake or the dark springs, the leafing elements. So that was the philosophy when you look at the interior from the top. You can see the centerpiece is quite light, and then it would go out darker. And look at this as a sketch, but in the real model, it actually fades out to black. Literally, the boundary areas are almost black, or piano black, actually. And I think that fade is actually quite clever with the whole motif of the lotus flower. Detailing for CMF was done completely. The Guangzhou team was led by Stefan Chen and also Dove. They did a great job in the Guangzhou facility of pulling together all these different materials to make it actually feasible and work. And we went back and forth even on the lining of the seats that follows the roof lining, had to coordinate and still stitch and work well. So Stefan and Dove in Guangzhou, they led the CMF completely. So then you had a bit of a triangle going on again. So we had Shanghai and Guangzhou and LA, but we could often meet between Shanghai and Guangzhou. But I think the CMF team did a phenomenal job coming up with something symbolic but also very unique and culturally authentic. The digital side was in the UI UX. So all the digital detailing, whether it be interior, exterior, or even the UI UX, we wanted to have all the graphical information done with a digital feel. That being housed completely away in the front IP structure, and also the steering wheel would not come on until you need it. So here you can see a quick animation of what it would appear for the UI UX. What we did is we actually used the Indigo system, or sorry, Adigo system. So the Adigo system is a system that's in place now. So we wanted to take the actual production system and then adapt it to these 4 different zones that we have in the interior. That itself could be another lecture completely, is how that UI UX interaction works with the 4 different zones, what the 4 different zones do in that environment, the parents, the grandparents, the kids, that can all go through this Adigo system in different ways, interact, not interact. Really deep, long story that we didn't have time to get into in the launch of the vehicle, but I think it did help us to use something that we had in hand, but still we could implement into a concept. So it showed the flexibility of the UI UX system. Technical details for the interior were very geometric. So we had this geometric pattern in the wheel well area that flowed into the doors, and there's a similar pattern that also flowed out into the exterior. If you look at the rear of the exterior, it also has a very cool geometric digital type pattern. So we picked several that worked well and just ran with one in the end. I think it came out very interesting in both the exterior and interior. As you can see here, how it flows from the wheel well and then into the line work in the doors. We spend a lot of time working on the jewelry. It's the devil's in the detail. The closer you got, the better it gets. Especially with the ends of the technical areas like the IP and the structural zones where these speakers are. We had these 4-part, beautifully done jewelry speakers. So looks great in photo when you finally get to see it up close. So collaboration, this is the key part, and these are my last few slides to talk about how we collaborate. So we have VR systems, obviously, in Shanghai and Guangzhou and LA, and we can sit in an interior here and share it in theory with the guys in Guangzhou or even LA. So for the show car, we could do this quite easily, and we do it also for other projects. So we use our VR system in Shanghai studio quite regularly because we can't be there, as Fan says, we can't be there every day. So this becomes quite handy. But then here you can see what the interior of the vehicle looks like. For example, I'm looking at the same thing that my counterpart or Fan is looking at in Guangzhou, or even a third location, so that we can share ideas on the fly as we're doing VR evaluations of, say, an interior or exterior, whichever. But then we would do, in this case, a quick foam model mill-outs to prove the ergonomics and physical world. And sometimes we'd find little things like, oh, the steering wheel is a little low. Oops, okay, so we'll pick that up a bit. And so I think it's still important to do foam prove-outs, especially with an interior, because you will find a few things that are not quite right. But generally, we were pretty spot on. And here's some of our designers, Minya and Kiki, working hard on the exterior in the Shanghai studio. And yeah, the full team, this was during the final build just before paint. So this was the dry fit review where we all came together kind of for the first time. We built the vehicle in Shanghai and the other guys came and the interior guys were there and CMF was there and Fan was there. And it was the first time we got to see this thing kind of coming together. Okay, we in Shanghai, we're seeing it almost daily, but for all of us to be together towards the end of it and see it come together, of course, we had our to-do lists, was really, really cool because it was the first time we'd all physically seen this all together. It was a very interesting experience, but it worked. Sure, we had our little things to fix, but they got fixed. And here we are at the launch. Obviously, that was November last year. And since then, I think a lot of the learnings of this vehicle, not just for story, but also for interior package, and of course, the great aerodynamic number that was started from the beginning and only got better as it went through, as you'll see in a minute from the LA guys. I think it's just a phenomenal achievement. We're all very, very happy to have been part of something like this. So, yeah. So that's our story for the quick story for the interior. So thank you very much for that, Abel and crew, and everyone else. Hello out there. This is so bizarre. This is the only way I can see my friends is watching a webinar. I go, oh, yeah, there's Paul. I haven't seen him in a while. Well, I hope that made sense. I managed to get it in on time. I just hope it was enough. It's a lot of information, but I'm happy to share it quickly.
Do you know what? Even having covered that on in interior motives, there was a lot of material and quite a few sketches in there that I haven't seen before. There's so much detail in that concept. I mean, we sent somebody to see it in Guangzhou, but I haven't seen it myself. Now, we've had a lot of questions come in while you've been doing your presentation. Some of them are more specifically, I think, better answered once we've run through the whole car and towards the end of the webinar. So I'll pick up some of the questions at the end. But there are a few which are very much specific to what you just, well, one which is incredible, 3 exclamation marks. So there's some feedback for you, David. I think the first question and the thing that really leaps out at me about this car is the packaging and the seating configuration. From my point of view, and from when we saw the car in Guangzhou, that was possibly the most astonishing thing about it. At what point did you decide on that seating configuration, and were you aware that it was so radical?
No, it was just purely out of pragmatics. Like I said, we had to develop a cabin surface pretty quick in the early days. We have our chief designer, Shanghai Li Yang, who's a really great designer. He helped build the first base model to get us a decent CD number and get us a cabin. So we had a cabin that was a trade-off in how much big you can make versus how much area you can take. And then after that, we looked at it and said, okay, what can we do that? So it was really inside-out design in a way. We had to get this cabin right, and then we, based on that, just did the arrangements and figured it out. And I think the Chinese story came up from a conversation we were having in Shanghai with the interior team of who could we put in it? What's the story? So story is everything. And we can't just have a box or a bubble and throw people in and go, oh yeah, there you go. You got 6 people in, boom. It needed to be more than that. And if GAC is all about innovation and experience, the experience has to follow a story. So we looked at a family. We said, hey, we can get 6 people in this, even though the 6th one is like that big. We could do it. So we came up with the family story because we could fit another person in there that happens to be under the age of 2. But we could do it. We just the story fit the package.
Yeah, brilliant. There's something else actually. One of the questions that has come in specifically about the seating, and it's come in from Paolo about the vehicle seats. Is there any new technology or feature considered in order to improve egress, ingress, and comfort?
Yeah.
So is there any new technology?
Technology, yes and no. Structure, yeah. I mean, we had a central structure for the seat. As you can see, it doesn't have any side rails like you'd have on a traditional seat. So that helps. And of course, we had a lot of elements floating. So by default, you have more foot room. You can actually get your feet sort of under the seat if your legs were the right proportion, which is generally difficult to do in a vehicle, production vehicle, because those vehicles have to have crash and they have to have big frames and dual rails, and it's a different world. So it is conceptual. Yeah, you could do it. I mean, if you had like a monocarbon body under that rooted right up into that seat like we had, you could probably crash that and get away with it. I mean, the Neo EP9 does the same. It's an integrated seat system, but that is obviously not super affordable. It's not going to find on the road for 15,000 euro. So the ideas were there, but implementing it for production, I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult. Can do, yeah, but cost.
One of the other questions, which is the last question I'm going to ask at this point, is what was the most challenging interior design item to develop?
Oh, the baby seat. Definitely the baby seat, because we could had to go back and forth and how big should it be, and it needed to look like it would really work. We needed to make a seat that looked believable. It couldn't be super thin and not, kind of fancy like an Accessoire. The first seat we made, I think it was actually too small or something. We went in there, and I think it was Fan that mentioned he was sitting in the back, and he looks at it and goes, that's a really small kid. And we measured it up. It was like, oh yeah, it would like fit digitally, but somehow in the real world, but fine. It was weird just because of where you put it, how you interact. You had to step around it to get in and out. So that was actually one of the most tough ones. But overall, technically it was the roof, because we had the whole roof system had to fit between the exterior and interior, and that was super challenging. But interior design wise, baby seat.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. Well, you're going to come back at the end. But now I think we're going to hand over to Pontus, who I think is in LA, if I'm correct, but I'm sure you'll tell us where you are. And Pontus is going to run through the exterior design of the
Thank you.
David, can you turn off your camera? Oh, you've done it. Well done.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to speak a little bit what Fan started and what David showed about the studios. So when Fan had this vision, because the studio started in LA about 2.5 years ago, and then LA was the start of that, and the San Jose advanced engineering was already happened. And the 15th last year, we went for the technical center in Detroit, and somewhere in between there, Shanghai also kind of surfaced. And I think it's very interesting, the vision that Fan and Chairman Wang had here of these kind of smaller studios. We are a big OEM in China with, as you saw in the beginning, what Fan showed some of the pictures, a really with big factories and huge design department and so on and so forth. And what we can see, our outposts are kind of humble and they're slipstreamed. And of course, no one could foresee the COVID-19 situation, but speaking with a lot of ex-colleagues and friends in the business in other countries and companies, a lot of people start to aspire to this kind of more SWAT team kind of studio setups. We are purely digital. It's not because we don't like to work with clay. We have an exterior warehouse where we have 3D printing equipment and milling and so on. But it's just that the studio can be super slipstream and digital. And in China, we have all the facilities and 15 hours direct flight to our headquarters in Guangzhou. We can look at the full-size clay properties. Now, it's no need for us to see the full size here. We are benchmarking in the VR setup. We have a scanner, which is state of the art, that we can go and scan any kind of benchmarking vehicle and bring that into the VR world. So we always have references. But it's for Fan and our dear colleagues and the people that makes the decision, and they can put it together with the fleet to see the full size and clays and so on. So that is where we are with the studio. And here you see there's the entrance and the reception area. And to your right, we have our sanitary kind of setup. What is it? Thermometer, oximeter, and so on, but it doesn't have to be unappealing and unaesthetic. And that's a little bit of the mantra of the studio, is that we do deliver brain food via eye candy. And here's some other shots. So people speaks a lot about working from home now. Of course, that's not really as a normal working from home situation, but the whole kind of criteria of the studio was from the get-go to have a more homely situation in the studio. People are tending sometimes to do long hours. The team is the most dear to me. That's the most precious resource we have, and there was no point of showing something which was, very like a temple of a design, cold and concrete and so on. So we did it warm and very livable space for me, because the people spend a lot of time here. But we also been very digital from the beginning. So way before the COVID-19 situation, people have been working from home and have the possibility to do so. So that's a little bit of the studio. It's situated beautiful on the border of Costa Mesa and Newport Beach. And it's on a very busy street full of amenities, restaurants and so on. And we didn't want to have, as we did with Shanghai either, it's on a trendy place. It's where people can go out and enjoy the lunches and not being in an industrial area. And here you have the overview of the studio. So let's speak a little bit about the exterior and the challenges, what we have here. I think that the most important challenge here is, how do you do a car which is super aerodynamic? And our challenge from Fanning was very firm on that, was 0.18 in CD value from the beginning. But you don't go for the low-hanging fruit, having covered wheels and so on. And a lot of the aero cars that we see that reach a very good CD coefficient have similar shapes. But the big thing here is, and what is the beneficial value for us as a company and for most of all our clients, is of course doing an aero car which has a really good range, and how to get that one into our rest of the fleet of our cars. So the aero was the king for us, and not necessarily design, but we were going to the most extreme to keep a design language and shape it after the aero, but actually considering the theme and the design as number one. I'm not showing a little bit how we work here because we always start with with mood films, and just for the bandwidth here, we choose not to. But again, we start with a mood film that kind of set up the color palette, the graphics, the architecture, the product inspiration, and so on and so forth. And that makes everyone having a clear palette of what we're aiming for. But secondly, also, what we think is very, very important is that we start with a 360. So we kind of investigate every kind of form language or kind of vehicle and graphics and so on, and let fan look at those and see like, okay, this is where we are. When a designer wins something, the whole studio goes and end up as a team and support that designer. And I just wanted to share a little bit of the behind the scenes, the proposals that didn't become the EN0146, but was on a good way. What is interesting with this is that we tested these cars and all the different design proposals here with aero, and then just see like where are we and how can we refine it and so on. So this is one of the proposals here. Number one was designed by Eric, and it's another take on aero with two kind of bodies meeting each other, one softer and one harder. And this actually achieved a pretty good aero value, and after a little bit refinement with Ling and his team in Guangzhou, we came down pretty good, believe it or not. So very graphic and very stark and quite a statement. And again, you know, we're doing a lot of details and think how we could have some airfoil lamps and further enhance the air look of it, even in the small details. And practical solutions. So we think all the time about practicality and unorthodox design solution. Here is how could we minimize rear hatch and opening for the luggage and do it in a different way. Here's the exterior number two. This one is also by Eric, and this car is perhaps aspiring a little bit more to what we would consider a more classic kind of take on an aero car. But all the architectures that we worked do display a teardrop basic architecture. And this is very, very early proposals. Then we always go to the extreme on one case. This is a car by Ilya, and we just thought, why don't we just rethink the whole kind of platform and where do we place the batteries? And the surprise is, of course, when you see this in a perspective view here, a top view, that we actually have the battery packs on the side, and we do it almost like a X-wing fighter with a teardrop body in between. This was very, very extreme, but we thought we have to go there and we have to kind of really rethink what we're doing. Not very practical for a production car, nevertheless super interesting. And again, you know, it's just some proofs here of how we kind of work out things in detail and so on. Devil is the devil is in the detail or whatever. So this is the another proposal by Nick David, who is my exterior chief. This achieved very, very good aero very early in the project phase. And we also see how we still remember our previous concept and the DNA that we apply there. And this is the roundup of the contenders leading before Fan made the decision for the car that we started to develop into what then became the concept car. This is the theme sketch by Martin, and Martin's sketch was developed by Junsu. And here you see the early 3D properties. We always goes really, really quick into alias and VR and work in 3D all the time. 3D is super important. It's a mathematical language that everyone understands. It can be given to the engineers. It can be milled. It can be verified. It can be looked. So it's very, very important. We're very, very quick going to go to 3D very early in the stage as well. And I just flicked through that. Door openings, we did a lot of various door openings. This is a little bit aggressive, but really interesting as well. And this is the one that finally became reality. And here I just let you in a little bit how we work. Every week we have sessions with Fan, and we write the comments, what he says, and have this ping pong all the time. What was liked, what needed to be improved, how can we develop it. This is interesting, is the utility belt with then houses a rear view mirror, and the car doesn't have a lot of bling on it. So we did an electronic part of that, which can communicate with the light and when doors open and so on, instead of just having a chrome piece there. And it also needed that surface-wise to tie the car together. And here you see more development. We work very much with inside-out philosophy. It's very, very important for us, and not kind of condense and compress the various details into the body, but let them flow and breathe. And here you see like an example of the stop signal, what the lights are doing. And the graphics we started on the entrance, and it's quite iconic. And we work more with it in the future as well, that you will see. Here we're getting closer. Patterns and graphics and parametric is very important for us. It's not the main thing, but it has to be there just to give that extra little touch. Wheels, tire, thread design, and the wheel is super, super important, since we didn't want to go for covered wheels, and the covered wheels is the enabler to get down to a really good CD value. We invented another function that we call the hug. And it is a function that comes and hugs the wheels, and I will come to that later. Early development of the rear view mirror. And here was the final one, which is a sharp wing and continue the line from the front fender and up. And some ideas how to do this car without windshield wipers. And here we have the active wheelhouse shutter that we didn't know that we were calling the HUG, which is the Halo Utility Gear. And these are a patented thing together with some pontoons that comes and make no air gap between the wheel and the body. And this was such a game changer for us to be able to come to that record of the CV value. So here we're down on 158. And then, of course, the clay model that was milled out of our data, here you see it in Guangzhou. And this clay model was later taken to Mr. Ling and his aero team and tested in a wind tunnel. And then we were going forth and back. I think we had 65 different tests on this to achieve this number. This is Nicholas David. Ilya made a little diploma certificate for him when he had achieved what we thought was fantastic, 0158, but that was just the beginning of it. We could go even better. And here's a nice image of the car in the tunnel, some development sketches. And then I come to the end of my show. The end, I need to say something about it. It's inspired by a jet engine, the exhaust, and we did a very fine parametric pattern that then was continuing on the wheels and on the wheel treads. And it just have that kind of shimmery, beautiful look. And it's just like a nice picture to end with. Thank you so much.
That's amazing, Pontus. Thank you. I've got a couple of questions for you before we move on to Fan's presentation. Seeing those proposals that didn't make it through actually is as fascinating, I think, as seeing the design development of the actual concept. But just on that point, as the aero was so important, how did you measure the aerodynamic performance of the models at an early stage before you built the clay model?
So we worked in close contact here with two consultants in the area here in Los Angeles, and then of course with Ling, who is in charge of the aero team in Guangzhou. So we sent several models in 3D data to him. Every evening we sent something, and in the morning we got a result back of all the ones, and he tested them in the computer with a computer simulation, which was giving us a fairly good indication where we were. And again, the design was what we wanted to keep up. So of course, instead of going as we see so many, oh, it's an aero car and everyone can see it, we just went quite the opposite and said, no, how can we get in a theme, and how can we make this being something that we can use in our production car? And I think that is what is the most remarkable when people see it, that it doesn't really look like an aero car. Of course, you can see the teardrop, and you can see that it's an elongated car. It's fairly long. But apart from that, I think it's to a big surprise what we could achieve to many people doing typical aero cars. And I don't think that is needed to be done. And we always think of thinking outside the box and being troublemakers and see how can we do it different. It's always that. I'm very comfortable in being in an uncomfortable situation, and we never repeat ourselves, and we never want to copycat. And it's just a mantra in the studio. Everyone is, how can we change? How can we do this in a different way?
There's a slightly broader question which came in earlier, but which I think we should ask at this point, which is along the lines of how long did the development of the 0146 take from start to finish?
Oh, I already
It
remember.
doesn't need to be exact. But
I mean, it's a few months. Everything here is going really, really fast. I mean, that's a good thing and it's a bad thing. China works amazingly efficient and fast, and we have so many projects for quite a few people, and the number of products that go through Guangzhou headquarters is amazing. So it is never more than a few months. I think 4 months on the top. But since we are very digital, we don't do a lot of 3D properties, and so that's a good thing. There's one thing I sit and I think about the studio images that I showed. It is a beautiful studio place, and we're blessed with that, but it is empty without the team. You know, that's the most beautiful resources that we have, and I miss them dearly. Everyone is working digital, and it's working really, really well. As Fan said, it's just a level of trust and implement a good process. But yeah, the studio is empty.
yes. Are you in the studio now, or are you at home?
I am actually.
Yeah.
We
Horrible.
haven't had the same severeness of lockdown as in many other countries, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's brilliant. I wonder, I think what we might do is transfer control over to Fan Shang, who's going to talk us through a production car, and then I'll circle back at the end, and I've got a list of all of the questions that have been asked, and we'll make sure they all get asked in one format or another. Thank you very much, Pontus, and we'll see you at the end as well.
Thank you, Nabel, and everyone that's
Okay.
listening. I'm glad you're here. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll hand over now,
Okay.
Fan.
Good. Thank you, Maxim. Can you see my desktop now?
I can see, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you. Yeah, just like what David and Pontus have talked about, we have amazing achievement on this, 146 show car, as well as what we did actually in previous show cars. For GAC, we actually developing sometimes 2 show cars a year. So in our portfolio, we actually did a lot of innovation stuff. But apart from that, we are also working on a lot of production projects, especially nowadays. I think all of you know China is pushing EV very aggressively. So there are a lot of new startups in China doing EVs, and also the conventional companies who used to make a lot of petrol cars are also start doing EVs, creating their own EV platform. And GAC is one of them, and actually GAC is doing pretty good. We have launched our EV platform. We have launched 3 production cars already for EV, and they are doing pretty good. Especially the Ion S, our sedan, is in the top 3 in terms of the sales. And now I'm gonna present to you very briefly some nice sketches about the upcoming Ion V and SUV based on our EV platform, which will be released in 2 weeks actually into the market. So here's the front view of this car. This set of beautiful rendering actually I have put up in my LinkedIn portfolio. I got a lot of likes. I think this set of rendering really kind of presents what we are looking for, or we are trying to achieve with the EV designs, that to create something totally new, but still fit for people's perception about how a car should be. So there's always a balance. How much of a sort of a traditional automobile perception you should keep for the car, and then how much sort of the new EV technology you want to bring to the appearance of the car. For us, we concentrate on creating new form language, as well as concentrating on creating some very remarkable details. Like this picture, this is the headlamp, for example. We try to divide the headlamp into almost like 4 pieces, with the daylight running light separated in 4 vertical pieces. They become like a claw, visually like a lighting claw, that you actually could see this car from a far distance and recognize it. This is very new. I don't think any car has done this before. but I think for an EV, this is something very remarkable. And also for the rear light, we take the inspiration from the laser sword, for example, from the Star Wars. And as you are like weaving the laser sword, you see the laser light like swinging in the air, and this is where we get inspiration from. So as you can see, the rear light actually is continuous get into the side, and also actually it finished with the door handle. And also the wheels are very important gadgets on the car. They are like the shoes of the gentleman. Yeah, this is another set of the renderings. This one has showed the very good proportion of the car, as it is based on the EV platform, so we actually could get a very long wheelbase, very short front and rear overhangs. And I think this is a kind of a dream proportion every designer wants to have. It actually gives you a very good stance for the car, and also it could create very spacious interior space for the passengers. From this perspective, you can see what I mean about the rear light. It's like a laser sword swinging from the rear towards the side, and yeah, and also help to create a very dynamic gesture of overall car. Another view. And also, as you can see, the rear end, form-wise, is very clean, very technical, with some details. We took the inspiration from some other electronic devices. I really try to assign it with this electric character. Front end is very iconic and also very new. When we designed this car, our designers, as they are very young designers, like most of the car designers in China, they try to get the inspiration from the things that grew up with them. For example, those Japanese cartoons or mangas, for example, like this Gundam or Transformers, all those fighting warrior or robots. Those are very good inspiration for them to create a vehicle that is based on electric power. So yeah, this front end shows this kind of intention. And the side view, we try to create this very dynamic leaning in this gesture. It's almost like as you if you have the experience riding an EV car, the acceleration is very unforgettable. So this side gesture is almost like the car is about to accelerate. So a lot of things has been left behind, while the car itself, the front end, is dashing forward. The interior of this car is very spacious, of course. When we create the interior for this type of a car, we are not only trying to incorporate the so-called high-tech accessories like the dual 12.3-inch screens, and also some other sort of a high-tech look accessories. But as how we understand the Chinese customers need, they also need the interior of the car to look premium, luxury, with high value impression. Because they have paid a lot of money for a car, and the space inside, since they're gonna sit all the time, it should present the certain perception of a value. This is a very common demand from Chinese customers, and we're also trying to incorporate this demand into our design. So as you can see, the overall impression is still very kind of luxury like, with a floating central console and also surrounding the IP and the doors. And the rear seat is also very spacious and comfortable. That's another perspective for front end. And the door. Yeah. Now you can see the real car in the Photoshop. The car is coming in 2 weeks. It has already announced the pre-sale price. Actually, the pre-sale price for this car is only about 20,000 US dollars. It's actually pretty cheap, I would say, compared to those EV cars in American market or in Europe market. I think that's also giving the hint how the future automobile industry will go to. We say the EV is the future, but if you cannot keep the cost down, it cannot be the future that everybody could reach. So I think in China, we are working intensively, not only trying to bring up a new authentic design for the EV cars, but also working very closely together with the engineers, how to keep the cost down to make the car more reachable for normal people, and eventually it will be a good replacement for the petrol car. So yeah, so stay tuned. The car will be coming soon. Hopefully you can see the car in the streets soon, no matter where you are. That's it. I think this picture is the last one, yeah, for introducing the IONB.
Thank you very much,
Yes,
Fan. That's yeah, thank you for that. And we'll obviously be covering the launch on Car Design News. Can I ask, are launch conditions for launching new cars normal in China now? I mean, particularly in Europe and also in the US, a lot of companies are holding back on launching. Are you back to normal circumstances now?
It's a very interesting question. Actually, recently there are still a lot of cars having their launching events. Some of them have held the launching event online. They did this online broadcasting, and some of them actually still trying to do the normal way, that would invite some journalists to come to the scene and also do the normal process on site. I would say both ways are going right now in China, but there's always some influence from the COVID-19 situation. So people are not very willing to go out, even though actually situation in China is absolutely safe already. So events like this, I think, are still not as crowded or as kind of efficient as before. But I think the online broadcasting actually comes in place, become a good additional way, help the company to attract the attentions, and also to send the informations sometimes even more efficient way. And some we call the Wang Hong, that means the very popular idols on internet, and those guys come in place, trying to help the car industry to sell cars also.
Right.
So the whole kind of ecosystem is changing in a very interesting way.
It's changing profoundly, and I haven't been to a car launch. I think this is the longest period of time that I haven't actually been and seen a car in my professional working life. And it does actually, this has really helped, because just seeing flat images doesn't give you a sense, but actually being able to talk through the design development images gives you much more of a sense of the presence of the car and the creativity that's gone into creating it. So from a journalist's point of view, I'm struggling with that communication element as well. But on that note, Beijing Motor Show is going ahead as far as we know, later this year. And below, you're showing us a teaser image, I think. Could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Right. Yeah, this is a beautiful, very graphical image that is almost like a puzzle. There's a car hiding inside. That's going to be our new show car for the Beijing Auto Show in September. Again, this show car is based on EV, and we're trying to take the advantage of a EV platform and then to create all kinds of new type of vehicles for people's needs. Apparently, we have seen the EV sedan, SUV, even MPV, and I think there's still one type of car is missing. That is the entry level sports car, sports EV. So yeah, this upcoming show car is a good practice that how we actually could use the EV platform to create a sexy car, and also it could be affordable for normal people, not something like a fancy, super expensive for the rich people's toy. Yeah.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
There's one more question that's coming from the audience. Guys, we are slightly running out of time, so I'm going to make sure that the team at GAC do get all of the questions, and I'll report back on Car Design News on the answers when I get them. But there was one question which actually I think it's important to consider, and it was, what aspects do you believe make Chinese brands distinctive?
Well, I think right now Chinese brands are really full on throttle, trying to go forward. Even like 5 or 10 years ago, China or Chinese automobile industry was still struggling with the sort of a stereotype of being copycat or imitating the Western automobile industry. But in recent years, I think the whole ecosystem changed profoundly. Chinese OEMs are really trying to get to the spearhead by using innovation, the new technologies, new design, new form language, and this drive is very, very strong. and also competition is very, very severe. As I said at the beginning, we are actually struggling to survive. That's why I think we have to use all the best resources around the world, best talent around the world, to help us to not only to survive, but also to create the better tomorrow. Chinese automobile industry, I think they are no shy of using new technologies. They are no shy of making breakthroughs. And since they don't have a long history of like making petrol cars, therefore this might be an advantage for them to run lightweight. Therefore, they can throw some of the let's say traditional perception about cars easily, and also be more brave to embrace the future. And I think that actually could come as an advantage.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm getting lots of messages from Abel saying that we've run over. So I'd like to welcome Pontus and David. If you can turn your cameras back on. We're actually going to wrap up the questions and send them to you afterwards, and then I'll create an article on Car Design News when we publish the video of this, so that people can watch it again afterwards. I don't know if Abel's going to come back on and say goodbye, but from me, thank you so much. It's lovely to see you. Like everybody, I've been stuck in my house for the last few months, so it's really nice to see you, and I look forward to being able to see you again actually in the flesh at some point in the very near future. And thank you for the detail that you put into today's presentation. It was amazing.
Thank you. And also thank for Car Design News that gave us this opportunity to introduce our organization, our design works, our latest achievements. I'm happy to have this opportunity together with my dear colleagues to show or to share our experiences. Hopefully that will be any help to our dear colleagues. But again, thank you very much, Max, Abel, Car Design News, and all the other people who have helped to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. I just wanted to finish by thanking them myself, Pontus, Fan, and David, and just to let you guys know, next week we won't be having a live stream, as the CDN team will be judging the CDN China Awards. Please go to our public account. So in theory, we're going to be virtually in China judging. So we just posted on our public account the finalists. We had 21,839 views and over 13,000 people voted for some of the students. So the buzz in China, guys, that you guys are creating, and in China in general, is amazing. So watch out for our WeChat and Weibo channels, and we'll post some of the information about today on those channels as well. Thanks again, guys, for coming and making yourself available. And look forward to seeing you all in person very soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks also to all the listeners. Thank you so much.
Yeah, see you guys around.
Next time I have my team with me, so much better.
Ciao, guys.
I gotta go to bed. Yep.